You hear that?
All right, folks, good afternoon and welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show. Did we get an echo? Okay. Did we eliminate the echo? We good? Test 1, 2, 3.
I'm getting it.
Okay. Not sure where that's coming from because everything that should be muted, I think, is muted. Yep, that's muted. Not running at all. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. 508-871-7000. Ted will work on that, I guess. Let me know when it's done. All right, folks. Good afternoon. Yeah, I actually haven't been in the on-air studio at WCRN for like a week, it feels like. So it's kind of odd. But back here at WCRN, you could join the conversation at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000 to reach the studio for two-way talk and conversation. And our text line is running at 617-297-8388. And of course, the station is streaming 24/7 to the TuneIn app, so you can listen to it anytime. I love that feature because you can take us anywhere. But be in mind, I'm also streaming it to the station's Facebook page, YouTube channel, as well as my social media platforms. And that's simple. That is Joe Mangi Show. Facebook X, LinkedIn profile, Twitch TV, and yes, to Rumble. But my friends, this is actually, so the first day I'm back on the air after the Super Bowl. And let's talk about the Super Bowl halftime show, because whether you love it, hated it, muted it, or switched it to the Turning Point All-American counter show, you knew that this was coming. You knew that the country was going to be talking about it come yesterday morning. And I'll tell you what, I'm not even going to pretend I was some like lifelong Bad Bunny expert or anything. I wasn't. I had barely even heard the name until the controversy became a program storyline. Days of arguing about whether NFL was going woke, whether the halftime show was un-American, whether it was all Spanish, and whether that was somehow the end of Western civilization. Exactly. So let me separate some of the noise from the signal here. First, the language issue. No, singing in Spanish is not by itself un-American. Spanish is spoken all over the United States. It's spoken by American citizens. Puerto Rico is part of the United States. We have millions of Spanish-speaking Americans who serve in our military, run businesses, raise families, and love this country like everybody else does. So I'm not doing the lazy thing where we pretend a language itself is the enemy. But hold on, the Super Bowl halftime show is also one of the most watched American cultural events of the year. It's not a niche concert. It's not a club. It's not a festival crowd that opted in and paid for an explicit tour stop. It's a national broadcast that's basically become a family event. Kids in the room, pizza on the table, remote control in dad's hand, and taking place on FCC terrestrial broadcast frequencies, meaning those broadcast frequencies belong to the people. So, public airways. So, yes, if you're going to take the biggest stage in American television, there's a reasonable expectation you respect the audience you're speaking to in an English-speaking country where most viewers speak English. Now, the smart move, if your goal is unity and connection, is to meet the audience halfway. You can still represent your culture, you can still include Spanish, but you should also show some respect for the fact that most America is not fluent in Spanish. Now, let's talk about what I think is the actual controversy. And I mean the one that any parent watching knows in their gut. And it's not the Spanish. On a broadcast watched by well over 100 million people, the NFL put songs into a halftime medley that, when you translate them, are loaded with explicit sexual descriptions, degrading references to women, hard profanity, and drug references. And the reason this matters is very simple. If those lyrics were sung in English, plain as day, they would have been absolute immediate national outrage. Not maybe, not some people. I'm talking sponsors calling, affiliates panicking, apology tours, and the NFL in damage control within minutes. But because it was Spanish, a bunch of executives apparently assumed, hey, most of them won't know what he says. And that right there is the scandal, because that's not respect, that's not inclusion, that's not cultural celebration. That's using a language barrier as a censorship loophole to smuggle content onto a broadcast TV that would never make it past standards and practices if the average viewer could understand it in real time. Let's be specific without turning this into a filthy radio show with phrases and words I can't say on FCC airwaves to begin with. And who brought this up was my Spanish speaking fiance, who said, this is what I have a problem with. And I went and translated the songs from the lyrics. One of the songs people keep pointing to is that Safaria, which was part of the halftime set list. And if you've seen the translated excerpts, like the ones circulating all over social media, it's not subtle, it's not suggestive, it's very graphic, it's profane, it's crude. It's the kind of stuff that would be bleeped into oblivion if performed on broadcast television in English. And I want to ask the question that nobody in the corporate suites want to answer. Where were the censors? Because broadcast television has rules and restrictions around indecent and profane material, especially at hours when children are likely to be watching. Now, that's not my opinion. That's FCC framework for broadcast TV and radio.
And the rules say nothing about foreign language.
Right, right. It really,
Prosecutable in its present form.
absolutely. Look, where were they? Right? Where were the censors? Because broadcast television rules and restrictions around indecent profane material, especially the hours when the children are watching, is absolutely governed in a big time. I mean, Chick, I think, bear with me for a second, I think I lost some of this the streaming for a second. We'll put that back. And let me get back to my point here. So nobody translated the lyrics? Nobody cared? Or did somebody translate them and decide, hey, we'll gamble that the audience won't do this? Because if that's the decision, then don't tell me this was about diversity or representation. That's not representation. That's corporate cynicism. Now, here's what made this even more interesting. The viewership in the counter programming. Turning Point USA ran the All-American Alternative Halftime Show, a big patriotic branding, marketed explicitly as a response to Bad Bunny's selection. And I'll tell you what I saw with my own eyes. I was at a Super Bowl party, and people weren't choosing one or the other. They had both on or flipping. They were streaming the alternative show while keeping the official halftime show up on the main screen. And that's exactly what we were doing. Because we certainly we wanted to see what is the controversy about. And we didn't want to miss the controversy if there was any controversy. So we had both streaming at the same time. Now, we know that controversy sells, and there was a lot of hype. And that's why I don't buy the record views, prove everybody loved it argument. That's not the case. Don't try that. The official halftime show drew enormous numbers, and the Turning Point stream pulled big attention too. But a chunk of that attention, maybe a lot of it, was driven by the same thing that drives half the modern media companies, or economy, I should say. People tune in to see what the fight was about. The hype of anti-ICE and anti-American was so great, people had to see, well, what are they talking about? They tune in to compare. They tune in to judge. They tune in because everybody's talking about it. And by the way, that should be a warning sign to the NFL and every sponsor involved. When your numbers are big or being juiced up by the outrage watchers, don't confuse that with cultural unity. Outrage is not unity, it's just a sugar high in this case. So let me be crystal clear on this, because I'm not going to play this silly game where you criticize anything and you get labeled. If you say, hey, this content is inappropriate for kids, that does not make you a racist. If you say, hey, the lyrics are disgusting and degrading, that does not make you bigoted. And if you say, hey, broadcast TV shouldn't be a back door for explicit sexual content, that makes you a normal adult with some standards. And especially is very rich when the same culture that screams about protecting children on one day suddenly turns around and say, stop clutching your pearls the next, because the explicit content, again, I keep losing the streaming, I'm sorry, folks, because the explicit content came packaged in a language you assumed that I could, in fact, understand. So that's not how it works. If you want to argue for edgy adult entertainment, fine, but then admit when you're doing it and put it where it belongs, on adult platforms, adult venues, adult time slots, in adult opt-in settings, not in the biggest family broadcast all year long. NFL loves to call the Super Bowl a shared national moment. Great. Then treat it like one. Okay? And that means respect the audience, respect the kids that are watching, respect the standards, aren't oppression. That what separates us from civilized form of chaos. And if the NFL wants to book global artists, and I'm not against global artists, then there's the deal. You can do it with class, with clean edit, and a curated set with a performance that celebrate culture without dragging the whole country down into the gutter, because there's a difference between culture and crudity. So that's where I land on this. Spanish isn't the scandal. Folks, we're going to take our first break here on the Tuesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti on AM 830 WCRN. Stick with us. Back in 2 minutes and 10 seconds.
You remember what happened after Jackson
Janet Jackson. Yeah, she had the wardrobe malfunction. Yeah. They were nuts. People were nuts over it. You know, I really don't think people understood what he was saying because it was in Spanish. Hold on 1 second. I got to read the message. What is it saying? Oh, okay. That's fine. It kept popping it off on the main streaming computer for some reason. Maybe because I muted the audio, it keeps knocking out the picture. Yeah, if you see it go off, if I don't notice it, because I got to switch screens, just click it back on. Huh. I don't hear the station. All right, folks, welcome back here to the Tuesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show at AM 830 WCRN, reminding you You can join the conversation at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. Hey, our text line is also up and running at 617-297-8388, 617-297-8388. Text that like you would any other line, and it just appears here on the screen in the studio in real time, and we try to work it into the conversation. Before I forget, joining us shortly here on the show, John Dean, who is a U.S. Senate candidate, federal Senate candidate, running against Markey, is going to join us in virtual studio after the bottom of the hour break. We'll hear from John, and he just filed an interesting suit, so we'll get some background and reasoning behind that. Again, 508-871-7000. Let's go to the phones. Mark is waiting patiently. Hey, Mark, what say you? No, we're good now. Yep. Yeah. Mark, I agree with you. You know, I made this comment that it seemed like, and I agree with you, it started right. You had them cutting the sugar cane, and he's walking through. And I made the observation while I was at this party. I'm like, boy, he seems like he's trying to fit as many racist stereotypes as he can into this little walk. First of all, I was very impressed with the set that they were able to put up so quickly. I mean, you got to give the people who did that some credit, man. But he walked by that. I don't know why there was a nail salon on there, but there's an Asian person at it. And then you come to the four, looks like Cuban guys playing dominoes on the it's like every stereotype he hit. And yeah, I don't think the messaging was very subliminal. Mark, by the way, thank you for the call. I appreciate it. And good point. Even if you couldn't understand because you're not fluent in Spanish, you got the gist of what was going on there. So what say you? I mean, again, I didn't even know that the controversy was truly the lyrics of the song until, like I said, I was told, oh, I don't like this because, wow, listen to the lyrics of what he's saying he will do or can do and what you should do. And it is very graphic. And I had debated whether or not I should put the translated lyrics up on Facebook, and that probably isn't a good idea. So I think what I'll do is put it up on joemangiashow.com as a post. to one of my TOEFs, today's observation for you. So I'll do that, because if you read what he's saying, you're like, this was on broadcast TV. They let these words on and they let him say, these are the things that I would do. It was not. It was not. It was unacceptable.
Joe, can I caution you to put a disclaimer in and let people know before they open your link or your
Yeah.
thing? Just be careful.
Yeah, you probably should. Pay attention to that. Again, I don't know why, guys. I lost the. There it is. It dropped off. I don't know why that keeps popping up. That's a very strange thing. Sorry to the people who are viewing this on Facebook, X, and so forth. I have no idea. We'll try to see if we can fix that. But anyway, 508-871-7000. We're going to talk to John in a while, but I did want to touch on the SAVE Act, because this is serious. First of all, it's very serious of what they're going to do with the SAVE Act. And whether it's going to pass, because if you've listened at all to this show ever, you know what I feel about voter fraud and the fact that we've got to stop it. And the SAVE Act is trying to do that. It's HR 22, and it passed the House back in April last year and was received in the Senate the same day, but it has not advanced any further since. So at the core, what is it, right? It requires documentary proof of U.S. citizenship when registering for federal elections. So this could be the real ID indicating citizenship, or it could be your passport. I finally got my, Ted, did you get the real ID yet? I mean, we already passed the date for the airliners.
I declined.
You declined to do it. Because I didn't have a current passport, and I did have to go to that funeral in D.C., so I had to go down and do the special, pay for the express it and all that to be able to get on the plane to go to D.C. a couple months ago. But when you register, so they're not saying you need it at the polling place, but you're going to need ID there. And there's also a newly introduced bill from this year, 26, Save America Act. That's HR 7296. That was introduced just on the 30th of January. And it referred it to a committee. It's still in the introduced stage of the process, right? Remember, I'm just a bill sitting here in Capitol Hill song from Schoolhouse Rock, and this is how it goes through the committee. So it's still in the introduce. And what it adds, to the bigger picture, it includes photo ID to vote in federal elections, not just proof of citizenship when you register. Don't you think that would have been part of the first part of it? So you got to be a citizen, because what happens, right? We've had, now it's approaching, I think 5.8 million people countrywide, when they purged the voter lists, have been purged because they're not eligible. Either, again, they're not alive, which instantly makes you ineligible to vote in most states. You do not live in the district because you moved but never took it off, or you're not eligible to vote. You're just not eligible to vote. And some of the times it's because you're not a citizen. So I don't know why people have a problem with purging voter lists. It should be done often.
Every year.
It should be done every year. But what we when we had Clements on a couple of weeks ago, he pointed out that they'll purge these lists, months out before the election. But lo and behold, right before the election, they swell again. And it's hard to do this. So they're saying, look, you got to have proof that you're a citizen when you register to vote. I don't have a problem with that. If you have a problem with it, please, 508-871-7000, explain to us, like we're 5-year-olds, why that should be a problem. And then the second part, when you actually go to vote, you don't just get to say Bill Smith, 123 Main Street, because that's not real classified information. Like, anybody can walk in and give a name and an address. But when you claim to be this person at 123 Main Street, they say, hey, that's fantastic. Can I see an ID? I love when they do the on the street. And I watched a clip the other day where one of these citizen journalists decided to go to New York. and stopped random black people on the street to ask them about this issue. And I was amazed at so many that weren't even aware that this was an issue or a thing. And when they asked him, "Do you have an ID?" Every black person asked him, "Yeah, of course I have an ID." Well, some say from a certain political side that you're incapable of getting an ID. Do you know where the register, the motor vehicle registry is? Yeah. And they shoot out the address. And they themselves were unbelieved. And then once they realized the crux of that question, they were actually insulted. As should everybody in the black community should be insulted if the Democrats are trying to say, well, we got to look out for black people because they're incapable of getting an ID like everyone else does in the country. That's just silly and should be extremely insulting, folks. So the SAVE Act is very important right now, and nothing is law yet on this. The version passed, the 22 version passed the House. And the version that explicitly pushes the ID to vote is the HR 7296, not even out of committee. So to get national show ID to vote, Congress would need to have that House passage, the Senate passage, and practically, right, either 60 votes to beat the filibuster or a rules change to do that. Ted?
Maybe when we come back, you could discuss, or fill me in like I'm a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
What is Schumer saying when he says this is Jim Crow or
Well,
I just don't get it.
Absolutely, because Schumer also said that the Georgia voting laws was also, actually, I think he called it Jim Eagle, trying to say it was Jim Crow. And I think that was the year that Georgia had record-breaking voter turnout. So, look, Schumer, in my opinion, is a joke. Because I can run all kinds of video of him saying X during the Barack Obama administration and contradicting himself in the modern day or under the Joe Biden administration. So that's just a joke, folks. But look, we do have to take our mid-show break here on the Tuesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. Back with U.S. Senator John Denton. When we come back, on the other side, stick with us, folks. 2 minutes, 10 seconds. There we go. All right. Yep. Where are we got back on? All right, folks. All right, folks, welcome back to the Tuesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. I don't know why we got that echo again. Got it. Okay. Well, welcome back, folks. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. That's 508-871-7000. And as promised, John Deaton is joining us in our virtual studio, candidate for U.S. Senate here against Ed Markey. So, John, welcome into the studio. Thank you for taking time out, and I know you have a busy schedule.
Well, thank you for having me, Joe. It's a pleasure to be with you, my friend.
Awesome. And you were on the plane, so where are you talking to us from?
I'm calling you from Florida. I left, I think when I left Bolton, my house in Bolton this morning, it was 8 degrees, and it's sunny here and pretty nice in Florida.
All right. I'm not hearing anything, Ted. I'm sorry about that.
Can you hear me?
Now I can. Yeah, sure. Thank you. I didn't quite hear where you're calling from, but let's get into
Sure.
the questions. And there is an echo. I don't know why we're having a feedback. That's an odd thing to be happening. I don't know, Ted, what to do with that. Okay. I'm sorry, John. John, obviously the question is to ask you, you'd be remiss in not doing this, is why now? Why are you running for the 2026 U.S. Senate seat? And what's the top measurable outcome you deliver in your first 100 days, say?
And I ran against Elizabeth Warren because I felt compelled in 2024. I knew my chances were pretty slim as a no-name candidate. You and your audience had never heard of me, even though I've been a lawyer in Massachusetts for about 25 years. But I felt compelled to do it because there's a crisis. We have all kinds of crises in this country, whether it's the border, whether it's national security, whether it's foreign wars, housing, inflation, you name it. But the greatest crisis we face is a crisis of leadership. We have career politicians, and my new opponent is Ed Markey. He's been in D.C. since 1976, and they're loyal to an agenda, not the people in Massachusetts. And so I didn't know if I'd run again, Joe, but some people did a poll. That poll showed me actually beating Markey. And then when I learned that I could basically get endorsed by the Mass GOP and not have a primary opponent, it gives us a real chance for change. Markey and Moulton, they're going to be tied up. They're going to be going super left to try to appease to their base. And I can bring common sense policies like energy policy. I got a plan to put 4 nuclear SMRs. These are small modular reactors. It will power 40% of the homes in Massachusetts. 97% efficiency, completely carbon emission free. Markey and them won't even talk about nuclear. They're acting back as in the Chernobyl days, or 3 Mile Island.
Seabrook Island. Yeah.
Yes. It's insane that they just, they're talking offshore wind. I don't even know how you can call yourself an environmentalist and push offshore wind. And I got a housing plan. I've got all kinds of these ideas that are fresh ideas. And I think Massachusetts is at a critical point. If we don't make progress, I got 1.35 million votes, almost 41% in 2024, but we don't have one non-Democratic voice. All 9 members of the House Democrats, both U.S. senators Democrats, and every statewide office in government is a Democrat. And it's not that they're bad Democrats. It's just some of them are too extreme. They're so far left, and Markey is one of them. And I think people in Massachusetts are ready for a common sense approach. Did I lose you?
Am I going up? I'm good. Yes, but can he hear me?
I can hear you.
All right. So my point is, I don't think there's anybody under 40 that knows who Markey is. I mean, the guy's been there longer than, I don't know, it's 70, you said 76. I mean,
Yeah.
come on, I was 10 years old.
I mean, I was 8 years old, and Joe, this is the point you just made, which is the average age of a person in Massachusetts is 40. Marky's been in DC a decade longer than the average person in Massachusetts has been alive. It's insane, but it's not just that. His policies, he's still talking about the Green New Deal. He's talking about policies like Medicare for all. That's never going to pass. He favors open borders, and he's just too extreme. You know, he favors biological men competing against women, completely open borders, not just amnesty, but citizenship for all the people that are here illegally. It's just an insane kind of far left ideology that I think even offends center left people. You there? I lost you again. I'm sorry, I don't hear you. I don't know if you can hear me. You know, I'm going to maybe try to call in and see if that works. I still don't hear you.
Join us.
You're live, John.
All right, can you hear me?
We'll get this squared away, we hope. All right.
All right.
Live, John.
All right, thank you.
Hey, John.
Hey, okay, I called on the phone. I don't know if it's on my end. I'm in a hotel in Florida, but I apologize to you and the listeners if
You
it's.
got to turn off the speakerphone and just